The streets of the city were crowded and loud, filled with people rushing to their work or hurrying home, unaware of the boy who wandered among them. Kieran had learned to move quickly and quietly, blending with the shadows, avoiding the patrol drones and gangs that prowled for easy targets. He carried nothing but the tattered remnants of a backpack, containing scraps of food he had scavenged, and a small cloth he used to wrap himself against the cold nights. The metallic walls of the buildings reflected the neon lights, making the streets feel alive and harsh at the same time, cold and unforgiving. Kieran had no family, no home, and nowhere to truly belong. He had learned to survive, but loneliness weighed on him heavily. He spent his days searching for scraps of food, old tools, or anything that could be useful to keep himself alive. Most nights, he slept in empty warehouses or under bridges, covering himself with what little warmth he could find. The city was not kind to children alone, but Kieran had learned to be clever, finding paths that others did not see and hiding in corners where danger rarely reached. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the towering buildings, casting long shadows over the streets, Kieran noticed a faint sound, soft and desperate. He stopped, listening carefully, letting the noise guide him. It was a low, pitiful cry, almost drowned out by the hum of the city. Following the sound, he turned into a narrow alley, its walls close and dark. There, curled up against a pile of broken crates, was a tiny dragon, its scales dull and frosted with ice. Its small body trembled with weakness, and blood streaked its shimmering scales. Kieran's eyes widened. He had never seen a creature like this in the streets before, certainly not alive and vulnerable. The dragon looked up at him with wide, fearful eyes. It tried to move, but its wings were bent and sore, and it let out a pitiful chirp. Kieran's heart ached. He had so little to offer, but the thought of leaving this creature to die made him shiver. Carefully, he lowered himself and wrapped his small hands around the dragon, lifting it gently. Its body was surprisingly light, and though it flinched at first, it did not struggle. Kieran whispered softly, words meant to soothe both the dragon and himself. "Don't worry. I won't leave you here." He carried the dragon through the maze of streets, avoiding the main avenues where the patrol drones might spot him. Every step was a challenge as the city was alive with dangers. A loose metal panel rattled in the wind and Kieran froze, holding his breath. The dragon squirmed slightly, letting out a small cry, and he whispered, "Shul, it's okay. I'm here." The city seemed enormous around them, towering and indifferent, but Kieran felt a strange sense of determination. He would not abandon this tiny life. Eventually, he found a narrow staircase leading to an abandoned warehouse at the edge of the city. The building was dark and empty, but it would serve as a temporary shelter. Carefully, he set the dragon down on a pile of old blankets he had scavenged. The dragon trembled, curling up as if trying to make itself smaller, hiding from a world that had been cruel to it. Kieran knelt beside it, examining the wounds along its side and wings. They were deep but not fatal, and he hoped that with warmth and care, the dragon could survive. He tore pieces of his own cloth to wrap around the injuries, binding them as best he could. For the first time that evening, the dragon relaxed slightly, nuzzling Kieran's hand as if thanking him. Kieran smiled faintly, feeling a warmth in his chest he had not known in a long time. Caring for this creature was difficult, but it gave him a sense of purpose. He fetched water from a small cracked container and dipped a torn piece of bread into it, offering it to the dragon. It sniffed cautiously, then ate, tiny jaws moving with precision. Kieran laughed softly, a sound that echoed strangely in the empty warehouse. "There, see? You're stronger than you think." Night fell, and the city outside continued its chaotic rhythm, unaware of the small miracle happening in the dark warehouse. Kieran made a small bed with old blankets, letting the dragon curl up close to him. He wrapped his arms around it, sharing the little warmth he had. The dragon's breathing slowed, and soon both of them were quiet, listening to the distant sounds of the city together. Kieran felt a strange connection, a fragile trust forming between them. He knew that their survival depended on it, that this bond was more than comfort, it was hope. As he drifted into a light sleep, Kieran thought about the dangers that awaited them. Hunters, city patrols, and the cold nights were all threats, but he also knew he would not abandon the dragon. He had found something worth protecting, something that gave meaning to his existence. Even if the streets had been cruel, even if tomorrow brought new dangers, he had made a choice to act with kindness. And for the first time in a long while, Kieran felt that kindness could be powerful enough to change their fates. When the first light of dawn broke through the broken windows of the warehouse, the dragon stirred, blinking up at Kieran. He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his eyes. "We'll get through this," he whispered. Together. The dragon chirped softly, a small sound of trust and recognition. Outside, the city went on, indifferent to the struggles of a boy and a dragon in an abandoned warehouse. But within that quiet space, a new story had begun. A story of courage, compassion, and the first step toward survival against impossible odds. Kieran knew the journey ahead would be dangerous. The streets were unforgiving, and the city would not forgive a boy who carried a rare dragon in secret. But he did not care. The tiny life in his arms had given him something he had never had before. A reason to fight, a reason to hope, and a chance to prove that even in despair, one act of kindness could change everything. And with that thought, he prepared himself and the dragon for the challenges to come, unaware that this first night of care would set the stage for a bond that could echo across worlds. The warehouse was quiet in the morning, filled only with the soft rustling of broken cloth and the faint drip of water from a leaky roof. Kieran sat cross-legged on the floor, watching the small dragon curl up against a pile of blankets he had arranged for it. The creature was weak, but alive, and its eyes followed him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Kieran understood that trust could not be demanded, it had to be earned, step by careful step. He began slowly, speaking in soft, steady tones while moving gently around the dragon. "I won't hurt you," he said repeatedly, almost like a chant, hoping the words would carry comfort. The dragon flinched at sudden movements, at shadows cast across the floor, and at every sound from the outside city. Kieran learned quickly that patience was the only way forward. He sat nearby, letting it see him without rushing toward it, giving it space to adjust to his presence. Food was another challenge. The dragon refused the scraps Kieran first offered, sniffing and shaking its tiny head. The boy realized that trust was tied to survival. He had to show that he could provide, that he meant safety and warmth, not danger. Kieran rummaged through his meager supplies and managed to find a small packet of protein paste, the last he had kept for himself. Carefully, he dipped a finger and offered a small amount to the dragon. Its tongue flicked hesitantly at the paste, tasting then retreating. Kieran did not move, holding steady, repeating, "It's safe. You can eat." Hours passed. The city outside continued its busy rhythm, but inside the warehouse, time moved differently. The dragon's trust grew slowly. It inched closer to the food, testing the boy's intentions. When it finally ate, Kieran felt a small rush of relief. He smiled softly but kept his voice quiet, not wanting to startle the fragile creature. Good job," he whispered. The dragon blinked, its eyes reflecting the dim light, as if recognizing that this human was not like the others it had encountered, harsh, careless, or cruel. As the day went on, Kieran began to tend the dragon's injuries more carefully. The scales were healing slowly, but the wings were still bent in awkward angles, preventing flight. He wrapped small pieces of cloth around the damaged areas and cleaned the wounds with water he had filtered through scraps of cloth. Every touch had to be gentle, measured, and deliberate. The dragon flinched several times but allowed him to continue, signaling a fragile trust forming between them. Kieran spoke to the dragon about everything, about the streets, about hunger, about the nights he had survived alone. Though it could not respond in words, the dragon's small chirps and movements were enough to show recognition. The boy realized that understanding did not require speech. Connection could be built in silence, in shared vulnerability, and in care. By evening, the dragon began to approach Kieran on its own, nuzzling his hand and curling up against him without fear. It was a small victory but one that filled the boy with hope. Night fell, and the warehouse was dark except for faint glows from broken neon signs outside. Kieran made a small bed for himself beside the dragon, wrapping a thin blanket around both of them. The creature leaned against him, breathing shallow but steady. Kieran felt the warmth of its body through the layers of cloth, a warmth that was more than physical. It was a connection, a promise of life. He whispered softly, "We'll get through this. I'll keep you safe." The dragon's tiny chirp seemed like agreement, as if it understood that trust was not just given, it was earned through every careful act. During the night, Kieran kept watch. The city had dangers he could not ignore. Patrol drones, gangs, and hungry scavengers could find them at any moment. But he remained alert, listening for any sound, ready to shield the dragon from harm. It was exhausting but he did not falter. Every movement he made was deliberate, each gesture a reassurance that they were no longer alone in the harsh world. The dragon, sensing his vigilance, seemed to relax further, leaning closer as if it had found a protector in him. In the days that followed, their bond strengthened. Kieran taught the dragon small gestures, how to stretch its wings without hurting itself, how to nibble at food, how to rest safely without fear. The dragon responded slowly, trusting Kieran's guidance. Each small success built confidence not just in the dragon but in the boy as well. He realized that his own courage was growing alongside the creature's strength, that his compassion had become a source of power in a world that had often felt cruel and unforgiving. The fragile trust between them was tested one evening when a loud crash echoed from the warehouse entrance. Kieran froze and the dragon huddled against him, trembling. A patrol drone had malfunctioned, falling near the entrance. Kieran remained calm, holding the dragon close and whispering, "It's okay, it's just noise. You're safe." The dragon slowly relaxed, showing that trust was resilient, even in moments of fear. Kieran knew that this was only the beginning. The city would not be quiet forever and threats would continue to arise. But for now, in this fragile sanctuary, the bond they shared was enough to face the dangers to come. As he drifted into a light sleep, Kieran thought about the future. He had so little, yet he had found something worth protecting. The dragon had no one else and he had never had a purpose beyond survival, until now. In that quiet warehouse, amid the shadows of the city, a fragile trust had formed between a homeless boy and a dragon. It was delicate, easily broken, but it was also powerful. It was a promise that neither of them would face the world alone, and that kindness, even from someone with nothing, could be stronger than fear. When the first light of dawn filtered through the broken windows, the dragon stirred, blinking up at Kieran. He smiled, brushing his hair back and whispering, "Today we begin again. We'll grow stronger together." The tiny creature chirped in response, stretching its small wings. In that moment, Kieran realized that trust was not just a gift. It was a living bond built through patience, care, and courage. And it was a bond that would carry them through every challenge the streets would throw their way. The morning air was crisp, and Kieran stirred in the abandoned warehouse, feeling the dragon's small body pressed against his chest. It had grown stronger in the days since he had found it, its scales now gleaming faintly under the dim light. For a moment, there was peace, a fragile calm in a city that had never been kind to either of them. But Kieran knew that peace was temporary. Rare creatures like this dragon attracted attention, and whispers in the city had already begun to spread. Hunters, mercenaries and greedy collectors would not ignore such news. By mid-morning, the faint sound of engines and hovering drones reached Kieran's ears. He froze, listening carefully. The hum grew louder, sharper, and soon the telltale signs of hunters became clear. These were no ordinary scavengers. They were trained, armed, and relentless. The dragon stirred nervously against him, sensing the tension, its wings twitching slightly. Kieran held it close, whispering softly, "Stay calm. I've got you. We can do this." He knew that their survival depended not just on courage, but on quick thinking and careful movement. Kieran packed a few essentials into a small satchel, a few scraps of food, a water container, and a piece of cloth to wrap around the dragon if they needed to hide quickly. He avoided making any sudden movements, slipping through a side exit of the warehouse that led to a narrow alley. The city beyond was chaotic as ever, but Kieran had learned to navigate its shadows, to find paths that hunters could not anticipate. The dragon followed closely, its small claws clicking lightly on the metal-plated ground. It flinched at every sound, but Kieran kept a steady pace, murmuring reassurance with each step. They moved quickly, turning corners and ducking into narrow passageways, avoiding the main streets where the hunters' patrols would be strongest. Kieran's heart pounded in his chest as he listened to the distant voices and the echo of footsteps behind them. He could hear the hunters communicating, their words sharp and mechanical, filled with commands and instructions. "Check the alleys. The dragon can't have gone far," one said. "It must be hiding somewhere. Don't let it escape." Kieran's mind raced, calculating their next moves carefully. Every alley, every roof, every shadow could be both a hiding place and a trap. At one point, a hunter appeared at the end of the alley ahead, a tall figure clad in armored plating, scanning the area with a device that detected heat signatures. Kieran froze, crouching behind a stack of crates and pulling the dragon close to his chest. The creature whimpered softly and he whispered, "Shoo, it's okay. Don't let them see you." The hunter paused, looking around suspiciously, but after a tense moment he moved on. Kieran exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. The dragon relaxed slightly, leaning against him in trust, and Kieran realized how strong their bond had already become. They continued their escape, moving across rooftops and through hidden alleys, sometimes dropping down into empty courtyards to avoid the hunter's line of sight. The city felt endless, filled with dangers, but Kieran's knowledge of its hidden paths gave them an advantage. The dragon began to respond to his guidance, following silently and even adjusting its steps to match his movements. Kieran whispered instructions, "Stay close. This way, careful." The dragon's chirps seemed almost like understanding, small sounds of acknowledgement that strengthened their connection. Hours passed and the hunters' pursuit grew more desperate. They spread out, sending drones into the narrow streets and scanning rooftops. Kieran knew that staying in one place too long would be dangerous. He needed to find a safe location somewhere the hunters would not think to look, a place hidden from both drones and human eyes. The dragon's wings had grown stronger, and Kieran began to teach it small leaps and controlled flaps to navigate short distances between rooftops. Each attempt built confidence in both of them, a silent communication that words could never capture. As night approached, Kieran spotted a faint glow coming from the edge of the city. It was a canyon deep and mist-filled, rarely visited by humans. He knew it could serve as a temporary refuge, a place to rest and regroup. Carefully he guided the dragon toward the canyon, moving slowly to avoid detection. The hunters' voices grew distant, but the boy remained vigilant, knowing that danger could return at any moment. The dragon moved beside him, its small body now strong enough to keep pace with his hurried steps, wings flaring slightly as if testing the air for escape. Finally they reached the edge of the canyon and Kieran paused to catch his breath. He looked at the dragon, its eyes bright with both fear and trust. "We made it this far, but we have to keep going," he said softly. The dragon chirped, its wings flapping once as if agreeing. Together they crept toward a narrow ledge that descended into the canyon, a hidden path that led to safety. Kieran knew the hunters would not follow them here. The terrain was too dangerous for anyone unfamiliar with it. As they moved down the ledge, the dragon clung to Kieran's back, its small claws digging lightly into his shirt. He felt the weight not as a burden but as a reminder of why he had to keep going. The hunters would not give up easily, and their pursuit could return at any time. But Kieran also knew that they had something more powerful than weapons or greed: trust, courage, and the bond they had forged together. Every step they took through the canyon was a step toward survival, a step toward freedom, and a step toward proving that even a homeless boy and a tiny dragon could face the fiercest hunters and survive. By the time they found a small, hidden cave further down the canyon, both Kieran and the dragon were exhausted. The creature curled up beside him, wings tucked close, while Kieran leaned back, his heart still racing from the chase. He whispered softly, "We're safe, for now." The dragon responded with a small chirp, resting its head against his chest. In that quiet, hidden place, the boy and the dragon had survived their first real test. The hunters had arrived, relentless and dangerous, but they had learned something the hunters would never understand. Courage, trust, and a bond forged in the face of fear could be stronger than any weapon. Kieran closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the dragon's warmth against him. They had escaped, but the world beyond the canyon was still dangerous. Yet, in that hidden cave there was hope. A fragile hope, but a hope worth protecting. And Kieran knew that as long as he had the dragon's trust, and the dragon had his, there was no force in the city that could truly break them. Together they would face whatever came next. The cave was dark but safe, a hidden refuge carved into the canyon walls. Kieran and the dragon huddled together, listening to the distant echoes of the hunters' voices fading into the city beyond. For the first time in days they allowed themselves a brief moment of calm. Kieran traced the dragon's small wings with gentle fingers, careful not to startle it. "We've survived this long," he whispered. "We'll find a way out of this for good." The dragon chirped softly, pressing its tiny body closer, as if understanding every word. But Kieran knew the hunters would not give up easily. They would search every alley, every warehouse, every shadow of the city, until they found the dragon. The boy's mind raced, trying to devise a plan that could carry them to true safety. The canyon offered a natural barrier, but it was only temporary. He needed a route far from human civilization, a place where the dragon could grow strong without fear. He examined the cave walls, tracing the narrow ledges that led upward. "We have to move tonight," he said to the dragon. "No waiting. We can't risk them finding us." The dragon stirred, small claws pressing into Kieran's shoulder. He smiled faintly. "I know you're scared, so am I. But together we're stronger." Kieran checked the supplies he had scavenged over the past days. A small satchel of food, some water, and cloth to wrap around the dragon if needed. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. Carefully, he wrapped the dragon's small wings to prevent injury during their climb and lifted it onto his back. The creature chirped softly, pressing its head against him. They began the climb, moving slowly along the canyon's narrow ledges. The night air was cold, biting at Kieran's face, but he ignored the chill. Every step was deliberate, every movement calculated. The canyon walls were treacherous, with jagged rocks and loose stones, but Kieran's hands and feet found purchase, and the dragon clung steadily to him. Each sound from above, the faint hum of engines, distant footsteps, reminded him of the hunters still searching below. He knew they had only one chance to escape completely. As they climbed higher, the path became more exposed. The wind whipped around them, threatening to throw them off balance. Kieran paused at a narrow ledge, holding the dragon close and whispering, "We're almost there, just a little more." The dragon's wings twitched nervously, but it did not resist. Kieran felt a surge of pride and responsibility. The creature's life rested entirely in his hands, yet he felt capable, strong in a way he had never known. Courage, he realized, was not the absence of fear, it was moving forward despite it. Halfway up, a sudden movement caught his eye. A patrol drone had followed their trail, hovering above the canyon rim, scanning the ledges with glowing red sensors. Kieran froze, feeling the dragon tense against his back. He whispered, "Stay still, don't make a sound." The drone hovered for a tense moment, its mechanical eyes scanning the area before moving on, unaware of the narrow ledge hidden in shadow. Kieran exhaled slowly, relief mingled with renewed urgency. They could not linger, the hunters were relentless. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the top of the canyon. Kieran looked down at the dark, winding path below and felt a mix of relief and caution. The city lights glimmered in the distance, but they were far enough away to avoid immediate detection. He guided the dragon to a patch of soft earth on the canyon rim, letting it stretch its wings carefully. The creature flapped them tentatively, testing the strength gained from days of care and practice. Kieran smiled, heart swelling with hope. "See? You're stronger than you think. You can make it from here." The night sky stretched above them, filled with stars and a faint crescent moon. Kieran pointed toward the horizon. "We have to keep moving until we're safe, until no one can find us. Do you trust me?" The dragon chirped in response, climbing onto his shoulder and nuzzling his neck. That small gesture of trust reinforced Kieran's determination. They would escape the hunters together, and the world beyond would finally feel wide enough to offer safety. Their path led them through rocky ridges and over hidden streams, terrain unfamiliar to anyone who had not walked it before. The dragon followed Kieran's lead, each leap and glide more confident than the last. At one point, a loose stone slipped underfoot, sending both of them tumbling toward the edge. Kieran's reflexes saved them, gripping the dragon and holding onto a nearby outcrop. They rested for a moment, hearts pounding, and then continued. Each trial reinforced their bond, trust and courage intertwined, unspoken but unbreakable. As dawn approached, the canyon opened to a forested valley far from human habitation. Kieran looked down at the dense trees, a sanctuary untouched by the city and its dangers. He set the dragon down carefully, watching as it sniffed the fresh air and stretched its wings fully. The boy's eyes glistened with emotion. "This is it, home," he whispered. The dragon chirped, then leapt into the trees, moving with freedom it had never known. Kieran followed on foot, careful to remain quiet, letting the dragon lead the way. By mid-morning, they found a secluded clearing surrounded by tall trees and a gentle stream. Kieran set down his satchel and watched the dragon explore, its small body moving with joy and curiosity. For the first time in days, neither of them had to fear hunters or the city's dangers. The boy sat on a fallen log, brushing dirt and dust from his clothes, and allowed himself to breathe deeply. He realized that the bond they shared was more than survival, it was partnership, trust, and friendship. The dragon had taught him patience and courage, he had taught it safety and care. Together, they had become a force neither danger nor fear could break. As the sun rose fully, casting warm light over the valley, Kieran smiled and whispered, "We did it. You're safe, and so am I." The dragon chirped in acknowledgement, circling him once before settling beside the stream to drink. For Kieran, the journey had not been easy, but it had shown him the true strength of kindness, courage, and trust. Hunters might come again someday, but for now, the boy and the dragon had found a place where neither would ever have to hide again. In that quiet valley, far from the chaos of the city, they shared a moment of peace. Kieran looked at the dragon, now strong and alert, and felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had kept his promise. He had protected the dragon, faced fear, and guided it to safety. And as the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of freedom and life, Kieran knew that this was only the beginning of a new chapter, for both of them, a life where trust, courage, and kindness could thrive, unchallenged by the cruelty of the world outside. The valley had grown quiet in the days since Kieran and the dragon had arrived. Sunlight poured over the trees, reflecting off the stream, and birds sang without fear of predators or hunters. The boy watched the dragon explore, its small claws digging into soft earth, its wings stretching fully for the first time in freedom. Each movement was careful but confident, and Kieran felt a deep swell of pride. "You're safe now," he whispered. "No one can hurt you here." The dragon chirped softly, rubbing its head against him in gratitude. Even in this sanctuary, Kieran knew they could not remain hidden forever. The story of a human protecting a rare dragon would not remain secret. Traders, explorers, and even other dragons might hear of it. But he also knew that kindness, when shown, had a power all its own. It could reach places that fear and greed never could. As he watched the dragon flap its wings and leap from one tree stump to another, Kieran realized that their bond was more than survival. It was a message, a living proof that compassion could change the world. That afternoon, a small drone appeared over the valley, scouting. Kieran froze, but the dragon growled softly, standing protectively beside him. The drone hovered, scanning, then silently moved on. Kieran exhaled slowly. It was a small reminder that the world outside still existed, but it also reminded him how far they had come. He knelt beside the dragon, checking its wings and claws, ensuring it was fully recovered and ready for anything. "You've grown so strong," he said. "And it's because you trusted me just as I trusted you." News traveled slowly, but it traveled. By evening, a group of travelers approached the valley. They were not hunters but curious wanderers, scientists, and even a few guardians of rare creatures. They had heard of a human boy who had protected a dragon from the city's hunters. They came not with weapons but with questions, with amazement in their eyes. Kieran stayed close to the dragon, watching carefully. The creature had grown confident, its small body now agile and alert. Yet it remained beside Kieran, never leaving his side. The bond between them was evident to anyone who looked. The travelers marveled at the dragon's scales, its sharp eyes, and the faint glow along its spine. But what impressed them most was the relationship between boy and dragon. One had saved the other, not with force but with patience, courage, and care. Kieran explained how they had fled the city, how he had protected the dragon from hunters, and how the dragon had trusted him even in the darkest moments. The visitors listened, silent at first, then with quiet reverence. It was clear that the story was not just about survival, it was about a message that resonated beyond the valley. As night fell, Kieran and the dragon sat by the stream, the water reflecting the stars. The travelers had retreated to a safe distance, giving them peace. Kieran looked up at the night sky and thought of the countless worlds beyond, each filled with beings who might never understand the bond between human and dragon. But he also thought of how far a single act of kindness could reach. One choice, one moment of courage had not only saved a life, it had created a connection that could echo across the universe. The dragon chirped, nuzzling Kieran's neck. He laughed softly, brushing its small head. "You're not just a dragon, you're a reminder," he said. "A reminder that even in a world full of danger, fear, and greed, kindness can make the impossible happen." The creature responded with a soft, melodic sound, almost like agreement, and stretched its wings under the moonlight. It was a moment of understanding that needed no words. Trust, care, and courage were universal. Over the next few days, the valley became a small sanctuary. Kieran and the dragon explored its depths, climbing trees, discovering hidden groves, and watching wildlife without fear. Word continued to spread, and travelers from distant lands began to arrive, not with weapons but with hope. They brought supplies, knowledge, and even stories of other rare creatures who had been saved by unexpected acts of kindness. Each visitor carried the story further, sharing the truth that compassion could transcend fear, species, and worlds. One morning, as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, Kieran watched the dragon soar above the treetops. It circled, dipped, and glided effortlessly, its small body catching the wind perfectly. Kieran felt a surge of joy and accomplishment. This dragon, once fragile and alone, had become strong, capable, and free. And he had been a part of that transformation. The bond they shared was no longer just about survival. It was about hope, a living testament that courage and kindness could change destiny. By midday, the valley echoed with new voices, travelers, guardians, and scientists all observing the dragon's movements. They marveled at how it interacted with Kieran, following his guidance without fear, responding to his subtle gestures with precision. It was clear to everyone that the boy had not only saved the dragon's life but had nurtured a connection that could not be broken. Each act of care, every moment of patience, had built a bridge between two very different worlds, showing that even the smallest act of kindness could ripple outward, touching lives far beyond what one could see. As night fell again, Kieran sat by the stream, the dragon curled beside him. The stars shimmered, and the valley was alive with the gentle sounds of nature. He realized that this was only the beginning. The story of a human saving a dragon was spreading, reaching ears and hearts across distant lands and planets. It would inspire others, showing that courage, care, and trust could overcome fear, greed, and destruction. One act of kindness, he thought, could truly echo across worlds. The dragon stirred, nudging him gently. Kieran smiled, stroking its scales. "We did it," he whispered. "And our story, it will live on. Not because of fear or power, but because of what we chose to do." The creature chirped in response, wings stretching in the gentle night breeze. Together they had survived, grown, and shown the universe a simple truth, that kindness, when acted upon, could change everything. And under the vast sky, in that hidden valley far from harm, Kieran and the dragon knew they were part of something far greater than themselves. A bond that would echo across worlds, inspiring hope wherever it was heard.